It was 5 minutes to midnight when the sliding doors sighed open and the grocery store let me out like a held breath. December cold slipped under my collar and put its hands on the back of my neck. The parking lot looked like black glass with islands of orange light poured onto it by the old sodium lamps. Somewhere to my left, a soda machine hummed and blinked in its own blue weather. The night had that drained, end-of-shift emptiness when even your thoughts sound tired. I carried 2 paper bags against my ribs and a third hooked from my fingers. The key fob stuck in my coat pocket. I fished, swore, found it, clicked unlock, and told myself not to hurry. My car was 2 rows out, under the lamp where dead moths dotted the housing like burnt snowflakes. I kept my head down until the trunk popped. That's when I saw him. He stood where the lot shaded back into the kind of dark you can only call outside the light. Not hiding, not approaching, just there, far enough to stay ashape, close enough that my brain labeled him man. He wasn't bundled for winter, no hat, no gloves, a thin hoodie with the zipper open on a grey t-shirt, jeans that looked too light for the temperature. His hands rested in his pockets like he'd been standing there a while, not suffering, not shivering, simply not acknowledging the weather like it was a conversation he'd opted out of. I got the bags into the trunk in 2 practiced swings, kept my eyes on the groceries as if milk and cereal could testify for me later. When the trunk slammed, the sound unrolled across the lot and then came back, echo, with nowhere else to go. I pressed the fob for the driver's door, slid in, locked up. In the rear view, I could still put him exactly 15 yards off, turn my way, chin tilted just enough to say attention without admitting stare. I started the engine. Headlights washed over the rows. When they crossed him, he didn't glance away or throw up a hand. One corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile, not exactly. Something that acknowledged the transaction of us noticing each other. I reversed, slow, and let the wheels roll easy over the lot's shallow frost. A pair of headlights came alive 3 spaces down. I watched as a compact slid from its spot and idled nose out as if waiting on a signal I couldn't hear. I told myself there were still 3 other shoppers inside. I told myself anyone can leave when you leave. I told myself a lot of things I could recite without believing. Out on the main road, the other car stayed politely behind me, 2 full car lengths, then 1. I took a left, the car took a left, I sped to 40. So did they. I changed lanes. They let me. At the next light, I turned into the gas station and parked nose first at pump 2, 3 long steps from the glass door and the cashier's bored stare. My shadow car rolled past the driveway, hesitated as if listening, and continued away like it had remembered somewhere else to be. I sat there pretending to check my phone until the cashier started pretending not to look at me. The windshield collected my breath and gave it back. After a minute, I circled around through the station lot and rejoined the road, not going home yet, not ready to feed the same turns to the same lights. I stretched the drive like a rubber band, out by the frozen public pool, past the shuttered rink with its Learn to Skate banner curling at the edges, along the dark shore of the lake that only looked like water when the wind touched it. By the time I reached my neighborhood, the quiet had thickened. My street ends in a loop with a patch of city grass in the middle. 3 houses face the loop. Mine is the middle one, the same beige as the other 2. I coasted around the curve and backed into my driveway because it felt smarter. If you can leave fast, you tell yourself, you won't need to. My brother wasn't home. Thursday nights belonged to his friends and a jukebox downtown. I killed the engine and watched the porch light a moment longer than necessary. The house did its house noises, heat ticking in the vents, the garage door contracting with the cold. My key found the deadbolt. Inside, I locked both locks, turned on the kitchen light, set the milk in the fridge, the cereal in the cabinet, The bananas on the counter, like putting objects away was a way to put away a feeling. It should have ended there, with me under a blanket on the couch, some show playing to keep the room inhabited. But at 2:37 a.m., the motion light above my driveway snapped to full, slicing white through the blinds and laying bright ladder rungs across the living room floor. I went still. Not decided to be still, just stopped. The house listened with me. You can hear your own heart in that kind of quiet. It starts to sound like someone tapping a coin on a table in the next room. I moved to the window in an angle, lifting one slat with a fingernail. He stood beside my car. The hoodie shadowed his hair and eyes. His hand was against my driver's side glass, palm cupped to cut the glare, like someone trying to see into an aquarium. He leaned close enough that his breath made a soft, pale pair on the window, then wiped it away with the back of his knuckles, as if erasing his own presence counted as a favor. I didn't breathe. My lungs remembered for me a second later and dragged air in too loud. His head turned, not a snap, just a slow awareness, like he'd heard a song he used to know and glanced up to find where it was playing. The motion light made his face both colorless and too detailed. The wash of cheekbone, the pale seam of a scar I might have imagined, the mouth settled into no expression at all. I dialed 911 with my thumb and whispered the address. The operator's voice had the kind of calm that makes your panic feel like a personal failing. She told me to stay on the line. I told her he was there. She said officers were close. I stayed. He waited a handful of seconds more, long enough to make the waiting itself feel like a decision, then took his hand from the glass, put both hands back into his hoodie pocket, and walked. Not away from the house, along it, past the car, down the strip of driveway that runs tight to the siding, into the slice of dark where the motion light didn't reach. The minutes between a siren being on its way and a siren being yours can be elastic and cruel. The noise arrived from some other call first, skated past, returned thinner and then thicker, until finally red and blue braided across my blinds. Officers swept the yard with low flashlights, apologetic beams tasting the grass. No footprints. The frost had refrozen to a uniform glitter like nothing warmer than night had touched it. Did I know him? Had he said anything? Did he try the door? The questions wanted yeses. I had none. I got a report number and the familiar sermon about exterior lights. Phone handy. Call if he returns. The officers left, leaving air that smelled like cold wool and the moment after adrenaline. I slept on the couch with the lamp on, and the remote in my hand, like plastic, could arbitrate the dark. At some point, the motion light clicked off. Later it clicked on again, and I didn't get up. For 3 nights, nothing happened. On the 4th, the light flared at 1:14. I lay still and counted 20, 40, 80, until the click returned the yard to dark. On the 7th night, the light fired at 3:03. I went to the window. Empty driveway. The light went off while I watched, and for a second all I could see in the glass was my face, wide-eyed and unfamiliar, like a stranger looking in. The internet advised a camera. I ordered one, thumbed courage into a cart, installed it with the solemn competence of afternoon. That night, a ping bloomed me awake. The clip showed the driveway lit up like a stage. No person. No animal. Just the slow, chromed reflection of the porch light in my car's window. I watched the clip again. On the 3rd viewing, I caught a brief twin glint on the glass. 2 points at eye level the camera didn't hold long enough to explain. I told myself it could have been anything. I didn't believe myself. I started parking on the street under the city lamp. The first night felt safer, the second like superstition that might work, the third like a dare. At 2 a.m., the streetlight stuttered and went black. A second later, my motion light came on, hard and bright, like a white eye opening. The second police visit felt more perfunctory. "Sometimes people wander," one officer said. "He may not be targeting you," the other offered, like that would dilute the feeling of being chosen. They offered presents and left with it. The house settled into its old noises, each made suspicious by new context. The last time I saw him up close was a week before Christmas. The Loop's little municipal tree shone with the confidence of a cheap necklace, and a slick of snow powdered the yard edges. I made hot chocolate to give my hands a job. The motion light popped awake. I told myself I wouldn't look. I went anyway. He was at the bottom of my porch steps. One foot rested on the first riser, testing it like a musician might test a stage board with his heel. He held something small between his fingers, metal catching light, then pocketed it like he'd thought better. He tipped his head as if listening inside his own body. Then very lightly, he tapped 2 knuckles against the railing. The sound traveled through wood, into the house and into me, a small, honest sound with nothing threatening in it, except the fact of its existence. He didn't climb, he didn't call out. He turned, stepped off the bottom stair, and crossed the edge of my yard toward the oval of communal grass in the center of the loop. The snow showed dark in the scuffed places. He didn't look back. The motion light, unbothered by human narrative, clicked off after its measured interval. In the morning, I checked for prints. The thin crust of snow answered with a clean, even surface that reflected nothing back. Wind, sun, time, any one of them could have edited his proof. Knowing that didn't help, I thought about how much of safety is a story we tell ourselves about cause and effect, and how easily a stranger can step into that story like a reader turning a page. I bought a second camera for the porch. It recorded several clear videos of the mail carrier, one teenage kid cutting across the yard, and 2 raccoons arguing science about my trash lid. Nothing of him. I changed my routine, different store, different hours. The motion light burned some nights and not others. I learned to sleep between its states. In March, when the sidewalks began to thaw at the edges and the gutters ran grey as wet pencil, I moved. It wasn't dramatic. There was no climax where he tried the door or spoke through the glass. It felt more like admitting something to myself I had been trying not to say. He had found a way to live in my nights. Maybe he would come back. Maybe he wouldn't. But the possibility had become a roommate that never paid rent. People ask when I let myself tell this what I would have done differently. Park under the light from the beginning, walk out with another customer, march up to him in the lot and say, "Can I help you?" like every self-defense article insists. I don't know, I only know the exact shape of the feeling I had when my headlights crossed his face, and the different shape of the feeling when his hand was on my car window, and the third shape when his knuckles touched my wooden rail. I know that each shape fit into the next like nesting dolls. Sometimes, just before sleep, I replay the grocery lot and try to give him a purpose that would make sense if he explained it. Waiting for a ride, lost in thought, seeing his own reflection. But then I remember how he looked at the house with his hands in his pockets, not asking, not pleading, not threatening, just waiting. And I think, some people don't want to get into your home. They want to get into your sense of home. It's warmer there. It lasts longer. I haven't seen him since I moved. My new place has no driveway light, just a hallway lamp that burns and burns. On my first night, I installed the cameras anyway and watched their empty feeds until dawn, as if emptiness were a show you could binge. The next evening I carried groceries up the stairs and laughed when the bag handles cut my fingers exactly the same way as always. You can bring your life to a new address, but you carry your old night with you for a while. I'm learning how to put it down. And yet, even now, Every so often, without warning, the hum of a faraway soda machine will surface in my memory. And for a second I am back on that black glass lot, and I can feel the part of the night that looked like a man looking right back. It was around 10:45 on a Tuesday night when I left the gym. The parking lot was nearly empty except for a few cars parked under the dim lights and the janitor's old truck idling near the entrance. The sky had that heavy, low grey colour that means snow isn't far off, and the air felt like static. I remember thinking how quiet it was, no music from the gym, no voices, not even the sound of tyres on the nearby street, just the buzz of the lamps and my own breathing. I pulled up my hood, tossed my gym bag into the passenger seat, and started the car. As I reached to shift into reverse, my phone buzzed. It was a text notification from an unknown number. "Drive safe, Emily." I froze, my hands still on the steering wheel, my eyes on that short, simple message glowing white against the dark. I hadn't given my number to anyone new. I didn't even have my full name listed on social media. I looked around the parking lot again. Empty. The janitor's truck was gone. I tried to shake it off. Probably a wrong number, I thought. Maybe some guy named Mike had a girlfriend named Emily and misdialed. Still, I replied, "Who is this?" No answer. The drive home was only about 15 minutes, mostly through a stretch of quiet residential streets and half-built subdivisions. I lived alone in a small rented townhouse. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd mostly convinced myself it was nothing. I locked the doors, showered, scrolled aimlessly on my phone, and went to bed. That's when the second message came. "You forgot your water bottle again." I sat up, heart kicking hard. I'd left that bottle on the floor next to the squat rack. The only people still in the gym when I left were the janitor and an older man on the treadmill who kept glancing in the mirrors more than at the TV. I didn't answer the text. I just blocked the number. But when I walked into the gym the next evening, my bottle was sitting on the counter by the check-in desk. No note. Just standing upright like someone had placed it there carefully. "Hey, who turned this in?" I asked the girl at the desk. She glanced at it. "Oh, that's yours. Guy brought it in this morning. Said he found it by the weights." Older guy, grey hoodie, glasses. That sounded like the man on the treadmill. Did he say his name? She shook her head. Just said you'd probably be back for it. I thanked her, threw the bottle in my bag, and told myself not to be paranoid. Maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe. That night, I dreamed I was lifting at the gym again, but when I looked up at the mirror, there were two of me. The other me was smiling. I woke up with my phone buzzing under the pillow. New message. "Did you sleep well?" The number was different. I didn't answer. I went through the day trying to pretend I wasn't scared, but my eyes kept darting to windows, mirrors, and parked cars. Everywhere it felt like someone was watching, but ducking away just before I could catch them. I told a friend about it over lunch, and she said, "It's probably a prank. Get a new number, block the unknowns, and stop letting the gym freaks get in your head." So I did. I bought a new SIM card that night, changed all my passwords, and set up two-step authentication for everything. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then Friday night, as I was driving home from work, I noticed the same silver sedan in my rearview mirror for almost the entire trip. When I turned off the main road into my neighborhood, it turned too. When I slowed near my house, so did it. I kept driving past my driveway and circled the block instead. The sedan kept going straight, taillights disappearing into the dark. My stomach unclenched. I parked, went inside, and told myself I'd just been imagining things again, until I saw the note. It was wedged in the crack between my storm door and the main door. White paper, folded once, No envelope. I opened it under the porch light. "You shouldn't have changed your number, Emily." The handwriting was neat, all caps, too careful, like someone who was used to writing in straight lines even without a ruler. I called the police. 2 officers came, checked around the house, took the note, and promised to add patrols to the area. Their tone was polite but distant, the way people sound when they don't quite believe you but don't want to say it out loud. I didn't sleep much that night. Every sound, every car passing, every branch scraping the window made me tense. At one point I thought I heard someone on the porch, but when I looked, there was nothing. The next day I went to the gym again, just to see if he'd be there. And he was. Same older man, same hoodie, walking slowly on the treadmill. When I entered, he looked up at the mirror instead of turning toward me. But I saw his eyes meet mine through the reflection. He smiled. Not friendly, not creepy, just knowing. I forced myself to lift, to stay calm. Every time I looked up, he was still walking. Same pace, same rhythm. 45 minutes later, when I was at the lockers, I heard the door beep behind me as someone entered. I didn't turn around. Then a voice said softly, "You shouldn't work out so late, Emily." I spun around, but he was already gone, his locker open, nothing inside but a folded towel. That was the last time I went to that gym. 2 weeks passed. I switched to morning runs, cancelled my membership, and tried to return to normal. I'd almost managed to forget him until I received an Amazon package I hadn't ordered. Inside, a brand new stainless steel water bottle, the same color as the one from the gym. The note taped to it read, "Stay hydrated." There was no return address, but the shipping label said it was fulfilled by a local drop point less than 2 miles from my house. I moved that weekend, new apartment, different part of town. The first night there, I didn't even unpack. I locked the door, turned on every light, and left the TV running for noise. Around 2 a.m., I realized I could see movement outside my living room window, shadows shifting against the glow from the streetlight. I crept closer. A figure stood near the sidewalk, half turned toward my building. I couldn't see his face, but I knew from the way his shoulders hunched slightly forward that it was him. I stepped back, heart hammering. When I looked again, he was gone. A week later, I got a text from an unknown number. "You look different in the mornings." I didn't respond. I called the police again, filed another report, even changed my phone again. They said they'd look into it, that they'd monitor suspicious activity. For a month, nothing happened. I started to relax. I even went back to the gym, new one this time, different part of town, different crowd. Then one Sunday evening, I was in the parking lot after closing when I saw it. My car's driver's side mirror had been adjusted, tilted upward. On the mirror, someone had written 3 words in the layer of dust. "See you again." No signature. That night, I checked my apartment locks 3 times before bed. At 3:12 a.m., I woke to my phone buzzing. Unknown number, 1 message. "Look outside." I didn't. I sat in the dark, phone clutched to my chest, listening to the hum of my refrigerator and the faint hiss of the heater. For a long minute, nothing happened. Then came a single, soft knock on the window. Not loud, just deliberate. I dialed 911 with shaking hands, whispering to the dispatcher what was happening. When the sirens finally echoed down the street, I peeked outside. The sidewalk was empty. The officer who came told me there were faint footprints in the grass below my window, but no camera nearby had caught anyone. "Could have been kids," he said. "Or just bad luck." Bad luck doesn't text you by name. I moved again 2 months later, this time across the state. New job, new number, new everything. I even legally changed my name. It's been a year. No messages, no packages, no notes. Sometimes I even let myself believe it's over. But just last week, I came home to a small box on my doorstep. No return label. Inside was a stainless steel water bottle, the same kind as before, but this one had my new name printed neatly along the side. The diner at the edge of town had a way of keeping time that wasn't on any clock. Grease popped in slow motion. Coffee dripped as if it had to think about it first. The neon open sign over the door buzzed a lazy chord that only changed pitch when the wind pressed its face to the glass. I worked the graveyard shift because it paid a little better, because classes didn't start until noon, and because the quiet hours between 2 and 4 felt like a hallway no one else used. From the grill I could see the street, one gas station, one pawn shop, one streetlight that flickered the way tired eyes do. On most nights the last wave of bar crowd broke around 1:30, then the room stretched out and yawned. Truckers hunched over eggs as if warming their hands on them. A pair of nurses shared fries without speaking. Once in a while, someone came in with the wrong kind of silence around them and left without ordering. You learn to read weather like that when you live at night. The walk home took 15 minutes if I didn't stop to watch raccoons raid the dumpster behind the liquor store. 3 turns, 2 crosswalks, 1 narrow block of old houses with porches that sagged like tired mouths. The very first time it happened, I had just turned off the main road and lit a cigarette to make the cold air feel like it belonged to me. The sound slid in behind my own footsteps so easily I thought I was hearing myself twice. Heel, toe, heel, toe. When I stopped to flick ash, the sound didn't. It continued 1 more step. Toe, then went still, as if surprised to find me surprised. I looked back. The block was a narrow corridor of dark, the kind you think a person will step out of just because your eyes are demanding one. The only motion was the little shredded triangle of a grocery bag worrying itself along the curb. I smiled at how jumpy I was, the way people smile when no one is looking at them, and told myself about echoes, about acoustic reflections off brick, about how empty streets play ventriloquist for your own body. The next night, it happened again, only more precise. The sound came at the same corner, past the broken stop sign, where the maple roots have buckled the concrete into a shallow wave, and fell into pace exactly 2 beats behind me. If I eased up, it eased. If I hurried, it hurried. I stopped in front of the boarded duplex, where someone had spray-painted a heart around a name, and then carefully blacked the name out. My chest worked like I'd been running, even though I hadn't. The sound took 1 step that I didn't, and then none at all. Daylight made it easy to tell myself stories. I told Lisa on register, and her laugh said, "You need sleep." I told Miguel on prep, and he said, "You want me to walk you a night or 2?" I told him no, because pride is thinner than you think, but it stretches a long way. After that, I kept it to myself. I didn't want to give the sound a name that made it like a person. On the 4th night, I decided to cheat. 2 blocks from the corner where it always began, I crossed to the other side of the street and walked tight along the chain-link fence, as if being pressed to a boundary could make me leak-proof. At the corner, I slowed down enough that I would hear any echo lag. I counted my steps under my breath like a child trying to win a game. The second rhythm entered on the 5th number, heel, toe, gentle, patient. Not shy enough to be my fear, not bold enough to be certainty. I kept my eyes forward and told my body not to flinch. The part of me that wanted to run spoke in bright neon commands, but the smarter part said no. Running is an announcement, and I didn't have anything to announce except that I was listening. By the time I reached my building, my throat was dry, the way throats get when you've been silent too long. The motion sensor in the entryway blinked itself awake and made a little electronic chirp. I took the stairs 2 at a time and fumbled the keys, because fumbling is the prize you get for pretending to be steady. Inside, I pressed my spine against the door until my shoulders hurt. The apartment smelled like old heat and the citrus cleaner my landlord uses to prove he has standards. After a minute, the motion light in the hall clicked off and the stairwell went to sleep. I didn't. The napkin appeared on the 6th night. It was shoved under my door far enough to hide from the hall camera, folded once with a tidy care that felt more personal than messy would have. My name was written across it in red, not marker red, not ink red, restaurant red. Ketchup pulls like that when you use the corner of a paper cup as a brush. I knew because I'd wiped it off chrome and vinyl for 3 months straight. I stood there with my hand hovering over it dumbly, as if it might move if it knew I was watching. When I unfolded it, something inside me did the same and didn't like what it found. Under my name, there was one line, "Don't look back." The period at the end was a perfectly round dot, which is harder to make with ketchup than you'd think. I brought it to work in a zip bag because I didn't trust myself not to pretend it hadn't happened if I left it on my counter. Lisa stared at it, mouth open, then closed, then a thin smile that didn't belong to any real feeling. "You're messing with me," she said finally. And then, because she saw I wasn't, "Okay, that's sick." Miguel turned the bag over in his hands and said, "We can check the camera." We did. The hallway lens showed a strip of carpet, the corner of the stairwell, the door to Unit 3B, which is mine, and nobody passing between 2:08 and 2:23. At 2:16, the tag on my doorknob fluttered a millimeter and lay down again like a cat changing its mind. After that, I let Miguel walk me out. He sat on a milk crate in the alley smoking while I locked up, and then walked halfway up my street with me, scuffing the gravel to make more sound than a single person makes. We didn't talk. When we reached the broken stop sign, I said, "I'm good," because pride again. He lifted 2 fingers in a wave and waited until I had turned the corner. I kept that corner behind me like a lid on whatever lived there. The first whisper didn't sound like a whisper. It sounded like someone breathing, which is what whispers are if you think about them long enough. I had just reached the middle of the empty block when a voice I didn't know felt like it belonged to my name said, "You're walking me home." Not loud, not dramatic. Ordinary in the way that makes everything worse. I didn't stop. I didn't speed up. If you ask me now why, I'll say because any change felt like permission. At the building, I pushed through the door so hard it bruised my forearm, took the stairs wrong-footed, and jammed the key in the lock enough to scrape metal. Inside, I sat on the floor with my back to the door again and counted tile lines in the entry until the number felt useful. It never did. I slept 2 hours with the light on, then went to class and discovered that the brain, when it wants to, can learn about medieval trade networks while carefully not thinking about ketchup. The next napkin was in my locker at work. Miguel found it when he went to borrow my lighter. The bag held the same folded square, the same tidy care, the same restaurant red. The message said, "You're walking me home too." Miguel swore and said my name in a way that made it sound like a plan, and asked if I wanted him to call the cops. I shook my head, because I had already decided what they would say. "Do you have a person? Do you have a face? Do you have a plate?" I had a sound that refused to be a person and a napkin that refused to be a face. I quit the diner the following week. No big stand, no angry speech about safety. I told Sal I needed hours that matched school, and he shrugged, because people always need something. I picked up stocking shifts at the hardware store, 3 neighborhoods over, where the aisles smell like pine in a way no living tree does, and where no one knows your name unless they read it off your tag. I moved apartments a month later to a building with a lobby camera that actually records, with a night attendant who stays awake by doing crossword puzzles in pen. For a while, I slept like people on toothpaste commercials. I texted Miguel and Lisa from a different number and told them things were good. I added 3 turns and 2 more blocks to my walk home and liked learning new cracks in new sidewalks. The silence around me felt earned. Then one night in the new hallway, I stepped over something white in front of my door, and my body recognized it before I did. The napkin wasn't folded this time. It lay open like a hand, and 3 small red footprints marched across it toward the door. They were too neat to be real. The ketchup makes the edges blur if you don't learn the trick. He had learned the trick. The building attendant reviewed footage with me right then, and she touched the rewind like it was fragile. No one stopped at my door for the hour on either side of when I came home. A man in a delivery jacket paused at the elevator, and a woman walked a dog whose leash glowed, and that was it. At 2:19, a draft lifted the corner of the napkin and set it down again. Could have been slipped under before the camera window, she said. Could have been something else. We both nodded in that way that people do when they need to be on the same team, even if they don't know what game they're playing. I started to think maybe this was what it would be now. Small proofs that couldn't become evidence, a rhythm behind me that never arrived in a person, a note that announced itself without a hand to blame. Fear is lighter than you'd think when you have to carry it every day. Your body finds places to set it down for an hour here, 40 minutes there. You even joke. "My ghost buddy," I told the new guy on receiving, and he laughed on the wrong beat, and I realized I was practicing normal in front of him. On a Tuesday, in late March, the rain came sideways and made confetti of the streetlight, and I thought, if it's rain loud enough, I won't hear it. The city had other ideas. At the broken stop sign in this neighborhood's version of my old map, the sound joined like it had been waiting in the rain for me. Heel, toe, heel, toe. Water makes everything honest. You hear exactly where a shoe lands. I stepped into a puddle and felt the cold climb my sock like a small, determined animal. Behind me, a second step splashed just a little after mine, and for one deranged second, I hoped some stranger's night had synced by accident with mine, and we could both laugh and part ways. I tried the thing people tell you to try. I turned, slow, not a whip, not a challenge, just a body pivoting to align with a new fact. The block was a watercolor of wet. A parked car flashed orange when a drop hit its hazard light. The air smelled like pennies, and the inside of a rubber glove. There was no person. The footsteps had been cruel in their precision, and now were kind in their absence, which is another kind of cruelty. I faced forward and walked home, tasting metal in my mouth. The last message didn't come on a napkin. It came as 2 knocks on my door, separated by 30 seconds, and followed by silence so complete it felt like someone had taken a long breath and was holding it, smiling. I texted Miguel because it was easier than 911, and he wrote, "Want me to call you?" I wrote, "No, just talk to me about anything." And he told me his cousin had named her baby after a video game character, and we both pretended that was very funny until the funny became real enough to hold. I moved again in June without telling anyone except Miguel. New city, new nights that belonged to other people first. The first week I walked home after closing the store, I noticed how the weather smelled different here. Warmer concrete, a sweetness from trees I didn't know the names for. The second week I stopped checking behind me at every corner. The third week I allowed music back in one ear. I put on a song that knows how to be both sad and brave, and told myself I had done what people do, outlasted something. 2 mornings later, there was a padded envelope in my mailbox with no return, but exactly the correct new address. Inside was a diner napkin, folded once, very tidy. No red this time. Blue pen, big schoolboy letters. Mr. Step. I stood in the lobby with the napkin open in my hands and understood, in a very quiet way, that some people don't chase you down the street. They adjust your sense of what streets are. I kept the napkin, not because I wanted a souvenir, but because sometimes you need to look straight at the thing you refuse to carry. I tucked it into a book of short stories I never finished reading and put the book on a shelf I don't use. When my mind starts its late-night lapse, I remind it that evidence and proof are not the same, that fear and danger are not always twins, that the night can be both a hallway and a home, and I still get to decide how I walk through it. I still hear footsteps sometimes. They arrive on schedule in the place I least expect to keep schedules. When they do, I keep my pace and my face. I let the rhythm be a rhythm. I don't look back. Not because a napkin told me not to, but because I've learned there's nothing back there I need. If someone is walking 2 beats behind, then let them learn my route the hard way by following me to safety I built for myself. And on very rare nights when the rain is honest and the streetlight makes confetti and the world smells like pennies, I light a cigarette I don't intend to finish and let the smoke mark the air like a boundary. Somewhere behind me, a heel and a toe consider their next move. Somewhere ahead of me, my door waits for a key that knows exactly how to find the lock.